Hello and welcome, and thanks for taking a few minutes to learn more about effective transport. And in this brief overview and demo, we're going to focus on Asset CMDB data and how you can best leverage transport to effectively manage that data. Let's get started. Now, when you think about your Asset CMDB data currently, what are the greatest challenges or what takes the most time? Now, you may or may not have discovery. Discovery is a great way to bring in data that you're focused on from maybe your data centers, your applications, your servers, and the level of detail. But oftentimes there are CIs that are beyond the reach of discovery. We also have other relationships and CIs that we need to add. And back on that first point, sometimes you have assets, CIs that are being retired out of legacy systems and you need to migrate them over. Maybe you're standing up a new CMDB and you need to quickly load that data. Customers have used transport for that. The other thing that's been very valuable of transport, and we have quite a few of our consultants involved in this, and that is using transport to build out from simple to complex service models. In fact, the example there on the right-hand side was built with transport. Our teams are able to build complex service models from 2 spreadsheets and load them, evaluate, update, and make changes very quickly. The other area that you're probably thinking of as you thought about your asset CMDB data was those relationships that are around your CIs, the people, the organization, the support groups. Is it used by? Is it supported by? The only way to create those relationships and manage them today is through manual process, a lot of point and click. And that's why we're going to look at transport. Transport's a Remedy application that installs into your Remedy ITSM environment, fully integrated, allowing you to load data into transport, validate it in the staging forms, and then move it to the appropriate environment. There are no customizations that are added with the installation of transport. In this demo, in this overview, we're going to be focusing on Asset CMDB data. So what can transport load? Well, first of all, let's focus on ease of collecting the data. Transport takes a very simplified approach to collecting it. Single, simple CSV files. I've had consultants that are helping customers go through the upgrade process and they're taking data out of an old system. They can use transport to quickly export that out, move it in the appropriate columns, and then quickly load it into transport to find the errors. You'll see the different types of CI data that we support, and with base element now being a part of the product, it makes it to where you can actually cover any type of CI that you need to load. So the benefits of transport, if we consider them, are to basically extend your reach where discovery may not get the data, or you just need a more efficient way of managing it. Maybe CI updates, CI relationship changes for service models or things that are being consumed from your service support process, whether it's change management or the incident service desk. Service models, as I mentioned, can also very quickly be developed and built out, loaded and changed, and then migrated with transport. You're going to see that example in the transport demo today. CI contracts is an example. I have one customer that they've automated the loading of contracts because they consume that from an asset perspective. And then the final last two is just those people to CI relationships that are constantly changing. We can automate the update of that, as well as those relationships around the CI, who's supporting it, who's using it, and so on. We'll actually see that in the demo as well. So better managing relationships, all the ones you see here on the screen can quickly be placed into a single CSV file, very easy to work with. So we cover all of the relationship types that today probably are all done manually because this is a separate aspect of data, almost considered federated data around your CIs in asset management. So that means people, support groups, and even people organization can quickly be loaded or changed. Data migration is very easy with transport. Now in development, I would probably go for it through a very iterative load of the data, testing out, validating, fixing any errors. But when I'm ready to load data into another environment, QA, production, transport's installed in those environments. I simply create a transport job, place my files in that folder or point to where the directory, maybe it's a data share, schedule the job, and it bulk loads all of that CMDB data across your environments. This has been very beneficial when we're doing service modeling because we can get those service models across all of the environments. All right, let's get to a demo and take a look and see some of these features in action. Now, as a refresher, just to kind of as a starting point, I want to remind everyone, if you've watched the other demos, we just want to mention that projects are always defined when loading data. At a minimum, it's going to define where the data is located. So we have the CMDB Phase 1 project that we're working on. The data is on the server under this project folder, and we have a dedicated folder just for our files. So that's at a minimum, but we also have the benefit of catching any auditing going on, what was last loaded. Sam was on site running configuration management and ITIL workshops in Chicago for this team. So obviously a dispersed team. So I can capture some of this information that's really valuable for the project, as well as tracking the activities if it's important to your process. So let's take a look at loading the data. All right, so now we're at the onboarding console, and as a data admin, one of the first things I want to do when I come to the console is go ahead and pick the appropriate project. In this case, since we're loading Asset CMDB data, we pick our project we've set up for that. Our files are placed on the server, so let's get started with loading the data. Now we'll go to Import, and we'll choose Asset CMDB. And you'll notice from this list, we cover the most common CI types that most customers will need to support their service desk, change management. But we also include base element. Now, this is really helpful for when you want to do service modeling, or there are other CI types that need to be represented for one of your ITSM processes to get access to that data. I also will mention just very briefly, and we have full documentation on this, if you have a certain CI type that you have added, or there is one in the list that is not in the list that's in the CMDB model that BMC provides, this list can be easily extended. We fully document on how to easily extend it, because at the end of the day, transport is a data management framework. So let's start with base element. What I'm going to load in this example is a very basic service model for financial management. And you'll get the idea of how I've loaded business services, applications, servers, VMs, host servers, and a lot of the components around that, as well as the relationships, which will come in a minute. So we're just going to get the CIs in to frame up all of that data. We'll go ahead and we've picked the data type here. It automatically knows where the files are located because of the project. Let's go ahead and load this. Now, when I choose import and transport, transport connects to that data source via the plugin, gets the CSV file, brings it into the staging form. As the records are loaded in the staging form, it processes them. If they do not pass the validation, as you can see here, we have errors in our data. Now, I've intentionally inserted this into this demo today because I wanted you to see very typical CMDB project. I have some files or files CI data that someone's given me. I'm going to load it. And sure enough, I'm missing some data. In this case, if we look at this, well, we also can look here real quick. So you can get a summary of what loaded, what failed to load. But what I want to do is drill in and find out, why is this an error? Well, because this product category is missing. We do not have it. So this is missing from here. So what I could easily do, I could go back to the person that collected data and say, fix the prodcats. But instead, what I can do is go to the spreadsheet, take these prodcats out, create another, add it to the spreadsheet for product categories, and we'll go ahead and load those. So I want to just show you just how quickly you can resolve data errors. This is one of the advantages of transport. Data comes in waves. We want to stay ahead of that wave and respond to errors when the data is not correct. We have dirty data. So let's see how we resolve that. So I took the prodcats out of there. I placed them in the product category spreadsheet. I've placed it in on the server with this file name, and let's load the missing ones. The missing ones are now on the server. Let's go back and load our data. We clear out our stage data and reload it. You are now seeing one of the examples of why data admins really like transport, because they can quickly fix the data errors they encounter, and those additional prodcats that I've added on development, I might give them back to the ITSM admin to add them to the master list. Whoever owns that data obviously wants those, but as far as my project goes, these files move forward with me and could potentially even be loaded in production. That's all dependent upon your process. But bottom line, the data admin can deal with these issues, resolve them, and move forward without having to stop the process. Let's go look at the data. So we're over here in Asset Management. If we refresh this, we will now see that we have loaded the various VM servers, the EMX host for those. We loaded our business services. So let's look at those. And we see our various business services that we loaded as a part of this. And let's narrow this down to Effect Tech. There we go. So financial management, PeopleSoft, General Ledger. So we're going to put all of this service model together in just a second. Now, before we do that, however, let's go ahead and go back to computer systems. And I'm just going to show you that we're going to load some details to these VMs. So let's go to here. And these various VMs, if I were to open up, we would find they're just the name. It's the base information that I have at base element. Now what I have is another spreadsheet that's going to fill in some of the details. Let's take a look at that. So we choose computer system. It knows the file name. Let's load the data. We now have all of our servers, various servers that we need as far as this, including the 600 series VMs that are on this EMX host, as well as the 700 series. And then we have all of the other CI components that we'll see in later service models. So this is just showing you when you have very specific CIs and you need those attributes loaded. Let's say we drop these out of an old asset database or another CMDB and we need to migrate them over. And then Discovery would come along and load them in. One other note I'll make here is that for the purpose of my demo tonight, I'm loading everything into BMC.asset. Best practice always dictates that we will go ahead and load this into a staging data set, and reconciliation would move this data into the production data set. So now that we have our base CIs in, we've loaded some of the details around computer systems. Let's go on and load the relationships. So from two files, one from base element, the other from CMDB relationship, CI to CI, we were able to load a full service model. Let's go take a look at the results of this. Okay, so if we choose business or services, and we choose Effect Tech, and we open up financial management, let's go ahead and expand this out. There we go. So we have our full service model expanded, a really basic one. And what I'm going to show you is that we've discovered that the connection to the database should be shown between the servers and not the application directly. And so what we're going to do is just basically remove a relationship and move it to another location. So I wanted to show you how easy it is to update these relationships. Now let's go look at the file. So we've placed on our server asset base update 1 and CMDB to CI relationship update 1. Let's look at both of those. So we're going to go ahead, and these servers are already in because I loaded the computer systems, but these other ones are missing or not in there yet, and we're going to go ahead and load those as well as another database. And we'll load the CI relationships update. Now what we're going to do in this case is we're going to remove two relationships. PeopleSoft Interaction Hub and Oracle e-business portal are going to be, the dependency there is going to be physically deleted, and we're going to go ahead and associate the Oracle's financial database directly with the server. We're just doing this to show that we can update and change relationships very quickly from the single file. And this becomes even more valuable the more relationships you have to update and make changes to. Let's go load this. So first of all, let's load our base element, clear out our data, choose the name of our file, our new CIs are now loaded. Now let's load the relationships. So our data is clear. Let's go ahead and change the name of the file. And we choose import and transport. So the two relationships were removed and the two new ones were created. Let's go look at the results of this. So the new relationship was added here. This one still remains because of the way that this refreshes. But if we were to reopen this, we would actually see that this has been removed. So let's do this. And we'll see now the connection is directly to the database. So that's a good example of how we're able to remove, add relationships. For the sake of time, I won't bring the other CIs in that I've added because there's another relationship file. I want to move on to the next example. But I wanted you to see how easy it is for CMDB admins could be given access to the onboarding console. Explain the files. They're very simple and easy to work with, and it streamlines their data management versus having to use some sort of manual process they currently use today, or sometimes they even go off and build their own solution to do that. Transport's a fully supported product that streamlines this, used by many enterprise and global outsourcers. So let's move on to the next portion of the data, and that is the people to CI relationships as well as the other relationships. Now, for the next item we want to focus in on is the relationships, relating CIs to people, to organizations, to support groups. So one of the things is a very manual process. If I want to make these services selectable in the incident management process, I have to open up each one and associate it to a used by relationship to that organization, either company or department or organization, depending on how you relate your CIs. That is required in order to make them visible from these menus right here. So let's go do that and make this very quick and easy. We go to our onboarding console. We import and transport our data, and the data is now loaded. So if I choose effective technologies, I will now see the various CI types because of the relationship of used by for this company, as well as several of the CIs, the VMs, and so on. So let's go look at VM 600 and see what kind of relationships were added to that, because it's not just the company, but we've added some other ones as well. So if we open up that server, VM 600, we come over to the People tab, we will now see that it is used by App Admin, Effective Technologies, and is supported by a support group, and we could add additional ones. As I said in the intro slide, everything that's possible from this menu that comes up from this dialog can be done from a very simple and single spreadsheet. Let's take a look at that spreadsheet. Okay, so what we have here is, what is the relationship type? Well, first of all, add and modify, you actually have a delete as well, so you can remove them. Relationship type is either support group, people organization, or people. The role is various combinations of supported by, used by, approved by, managed by. And then based on which one you pick, like supported by will not have the people ID, it'll have the company, support organization, and the support group. If it is just used by and it is just a people organization, it'll be the company. You can go to the organization level and the department. So these columns are used multiple times based on the type of role that you're designated. And then finally, the people are just used by and the name, the login ID for that user. You also have a couple other columns over here. And then finally, the important one right here is what's the CI, as well as the CI asset company and the application or the CI class name. So in this example, we've looked at various types of classes: base element, computer system, people to a CI relationship, or the actual CI relationships themselves. We have some other CI types that we can load when you're more specific on the type of data or attributes you want to load. And as I said in the intro, this list can be extended if you have your own custom classes or custom attributes on a certain class. This can be very easily extended. All right, well, for my last portion I want to look at is, I have a service model that I want to load, a complex one. I want to migrate it. Let's look at the example and then we'll load that. So what we see here is a actual service model for JD Edwards email and authentication. It's a very complex, large service model with its impact relationships that were built in QA and UAT. This was actually loaded and created for transport. It's very similar to a project, as I said, several of our consultants are working on this for a customer deploying service models. They can quickly and easily build these. But then again, you have to think about, well, how am I going to migrate this data between environments? Because I do want this available on QA for testing purposes and available for maybe future development, but I need to have it released in production. We're going to use transport jobs to migrate this data. Let's go look at this. So what I want to show you before I load the data is that the services do not exist on this server yet. So let's go to Services, All, and we'll see all of them currently listed, both for EffectTech or any one. We will see that only those that I loaded in the previous one are loaded. These are all the default ones that BMC provides. So JD Edwards does not exist. Email for another company exists, but this is not used with EffectTech. Let's take a look here just for Effective Technologies. And you only see the ones I loaded in the previous example. So let's go ahead and do an automated load with transport jobs, and then we'll look at the service. So we can access transport jobs from the onboarding console. If you go down to Manage Jobs, it opens up the appropriate dialog. Now, transport jobs in review, I've talked about in the ITSM Foundation demo, and if you've watched that previously, it'll just be a slight review here. Transport jobs allows us to link multiple data types together and load them in bulk all at once. Whether it is we schedule them up to run at 2 a.m. because that's my change window for loading the data into production, or as one customer said, I can click the easy button. I'm going to click the run button. It's going to load my thousands of CIs. And some people have asked, performance-wise, how does transport perform? It is very comparable to performance. We've done a baseline test against UDM, and we find the same performance numbers, if not maybe just a little bit better because of the multi-threading that is added for our filter plugin. So also with transport jobs, this is a good example of best practice. On this production server, if pretend for a minute that we are in production, I have the ability to have multiple jobs. These are what I consider transient jobs. The best practice is to have multiple of these, like job 1 and job 2 and job 3 for CMDB. So on your schedule, your project schedule, you would say, all right, this data is loaded in production and it's going to use job 1. You simply can just copy and clone these jobs and then just point them to the appropriate data through the project. So let's go ahead and open this one up and look at it. Now we'll see inside of the job that it is pointing to this data migration project. It knows where the files are at. The files are located in this directory on the server. So here are the files that I'm going to load for the service models. And here is the sequence of what I'm going to load. I'm going to load asset base element, CMDB relationship, and I'm going to relate my organization to those CIs so that they can be selected in the incident management process. It is very easy to add additional ones in here. You just simply click new, add in the CI type, or maybe you have some ITSM Foundation data that will always be loaded. The one thing that will happen is if it is going through and it was missing this file, it will try and load, and then if this one loads and it was dependent on the previous one, I will get an error message. In this case, I know all files are there. I've placed them in the server, in the folder on that server, so we're ready to load the data. So instead of scheduling at this time, I'm just going to go ahead and click the run, and we'll wait for our data to load. So if we view the results and we refresh this, we'll see the services were now added. So we now see the various ones that we needed. So if we go to Financial Management Service, and let's explore this CI and look at the relationships. There we go. You'll see from this example that we've loaded a very complex service that was once on QA in production. We took the 2 transport files. We did have the people relationship one missing, and I'll go back and add that in just a second, so the organizations will be loaded. But we were able to migrate that entire complex model between 2 environments very easily. And you now see that we have email in here. We also have the financial services, authentication services, and the JD Edwards that goes down to another service, which is a sub-service that I don't show, and that's Concur. So we're able to load a lot of CIs and the relationships and migrate them across multiple environments. So to summarize, we were able to load various types of CIs, their relationships to people and organizations, and migrate that very easily with transport between environments. Hopefully from this brief demo, you can see how transport saves valuable time for a CMDB administration team. They can load multiple data files simultaneously, different projects. I can be working on asset data that's related to certain CIs while someone else is working on a service model, and we're not going to conflict with one another. You saw from the spreadsheets, they're very simple, easy to collect. They streamline the data loads, the collection, the migration as we went through the one example. So we can take very complex data such as our service models in that last example and move them across environments and have consistency. That's one of the challenges many customers talk about, that really the only accurate look of their CI data is in production. They don't have that on QA and testing, and it really causes some challenge. Bottom line, though, for the teams using this, it lowers the ongoing data maintenance for them. Hopefully you found this demo useful and informative. But if you'd like to see a live demo and ask some questions of our engineers, visit our website where you can find the data sheets, and also you can request a live demo. We'd be glad to schedule one and walk you through any aspect of transport, including what we've talked about here today in the Asset CMDB. Thank you.